Hello everybody, welcome back to another tutorial, and in this tutorial I'm going to be showing you guys how I built my single player survival starter house in my single player survival let's play series. And now I'm not going to be showing you guys block for block how to build this. No, I'm going to show you the process and steps I took to get you an idea of how you can build this, how you can build your own version of your own starter house. Maybe take some tips from me and use it in your build. And yes, this is not a block for block tutorial. Okay, so first thing you need to think of, and it seems very silly, very simple, but really everybody kind of needs to think about this, or you're not going to know where to start and like what to build. But you need to think of a theme. What do you want to go for? Do you want to go for modern, rustic, medieval, futuristic, a cave base? What do you want your starter house to look like? And for example, what I went with in my single player survival world is a medieval starter house. So after you think about what you want your theme to be, you gotta think of the blocks, your build palette. What do you want to build your starter house out of? And in Minecraft, especially this version of Minecraft, there are so many different blocks to choose from. So for my starter house, I went medieval. And usually medieval blocks consist of dark oak wood with lighter blocks. Alright, so I just kind of threw together a very small, simple block palette. Now, please note that this is a starter house, and don't go too crazy because you may not have all the blocks in very early game that you may have at end game. So take it very lightly with your block palettes. Don't go so crazy and add too many blocks. Just remember, just get the basics, pick out the minimal blocks that you may need, and it's easier for you to collect because it is a starter house and it's very early on in your world. You may not have all of the resources, but for my starter house, you have your woods. Depending on where you spawned, you might have dark oak wood, or you might have a bunch of spruce wood. Deep slate's not tough to get. Mud is not tough to make. And if you have a good farm, packed mud isn't tough to get, and rooted dirt isn't that tough to get. You just need to be very close to a lush caves biome. But this is a very simple, basic block palette. Now, there is a little bit of contrast with the darker blocks and then this shade of blocks here. You can go add in maybe some diorite and calcite if you want even more contrast. Now, since you have your block palette, you want to start thinking about how it's going to look and the structure and the shape. So the next step is what I'd like to do is make the blueprint, and I like to make it all out of stone. When I built my starter house, I built it completely out of stone. The whole thing, the shape, the size, the whole structure, out of stone. This is so I can get a good idea of what it's going to look like, get a good image in my head. I can change things very quickly without worrying, oh, what blocks went where. I could just edit the shape very easily, and it works very well. So I usually like to start at the base and go build the whole thing. And basically think of it as putting shapes together. Okay, so I have two basic shapes here that I just kind of threw together and put together. You can go more than two. You could have three. You can make a circle shape out here, maybe something like this, because usually in a lot of medieval structures there is a tower connected to the building, and that is used for like a staircase. So you'll see that in a lot of medieval builds, Victorian builds, there would be a tower to the side for like a spiral staircase. In this case, I don't think I'm gonna add a tower. But for example, in my starter house, I added another section on the side here, which kind of acted as the same thing. It is a staircase to get to the upper level. It's also that you can add things like a bridge, a nice underpass here. But just to keep it simple, I went with these two shapes. And a good rule of thumb, always make your builds odd numbers. For example, this side here, this is 8, 9, 10, 11 blocks long. So that means your middle is easily right there. And it is just a great way to, very easy way to plan, where things are going to go in your house, where you want your doorway, where you want your windows. A lot. It just makes life so much easier. Now I have the power of world edit. I'm going to take these two shapes, or this whole structure, and I'm going to bring it up 4 blocks. This is going to be my base structure where my stone will be, kind of the foundation of my build. And from here I can kind of start, marking out some details, like by adding in archways, which is kind of what I did with my starter house. Now, if you're doing this and you see you have like a 4 wide section here, which is even numbered, it's fine. This is a great place for me to add a doorway. I just, doing this makes, breaks up the build, breaks up the consistent color, because these pillars could be wood. It just adds nice framework. And it just divides up the build, makes it look nicer. You do kind of actually see some of this structure in medieval builds or rustic builds, not just in Minecraft, but in like real life you'll see it. But yeah, and if you come across like a 4 wide section, don't panic. Just, you can make that your doorway. I have a couple here, which is fine. I have one back here. This could be used as like a storage system. Maybe I could put like logs here. Maybe I'm like storing logs in the back. I don't know. Kind of give your build a story. Back here I have a nice 5 wide section. This might be a good for a back door. But the only problem with that is it's perfectly in line, almost, with that. So maybe my back door could be off to the side here. And then from there I just kind of added some extra bits in the corners and, on the insides of these arches, just to kind of as a place marker of where I'm going to add stairs. Just to add more detail, so it's not all like a right angle. It'll make it look like there's curvature, like for example in my starter house you'll see it. Now this is kind of the blueprint of the base structure of the build. We have 2 sections, this section and this section. Now we're going to focus our attention on the main middle part of the build. Alright, so I added the middle section, and it might seem very weird looking like this. Yeah, we are far from finished, but the important thing here to establish is how high you want your build, and determining which section is going to be taller than the other, because it can't be all the same height. We need some variety in the height to attract our attention to the build and make it look pretty good and have it stand out. So I went with this side, the main entrance side, to be taller than this side. Just keep in mind, you can do this however you want. I'm just kind of showing you my thought process of how I go through about doing these builds. So yeah, and I also decided at the very top to add a little bit of a trim just before the roof line, just for extra detail. When I get to filling in the blocks, it'll let me know where I want my trim to start. And so now we are ready to add the roof. Now this can be the trickiest part on deciding where the roof is going to go, where the facing of the roof is going to go, how big is it going to be, what type of roof it's going to be. There's many different types. Usually in medieval styles, you see a very steep roof. And I'm going to put a roof on here and show you what I mean. Alright, so I added in the roof, and yeah, it looks pretty cool. And a lot of times in medieval builds, the roof will be very steep, and there are a couple tricks you could use to achieve this effect. One of the main things is when you start out at the very bottom of the roof, or at the very base, you go up by 1, and then you could do this however you like it. Then you go up by 2, like I did here, 3, and then 4, and so on, however you want your roof to be. And by doing that, it adds this really cool effect. Makes it look bigger, makes it look taller, It just adds a lot more shape, and I decided to connect the roofs there, which is pretty. It can be important in some builds because if it's not connected, it looks kind of weird. But yeah, that it looks really cool, and I did go ahead and kind of fill in the faces here of the roof. It's up to you to decide where the faces go. So whenever I'm designing my roof, my first thought is to make it an odd numbered roof because really the common rule of thumb here in Minecraft is to make all your builds odd numbers, and odd numbers are easy to work with. So I like to make my roofs odd numbers, and I also like to design it in a way where the face part of my roof here is like on the main, it's facing the front entrance, or like facing like the front part of the building. So like for example here, my doorway is smack dab in the middle of the roof. It's just all the way down here. But it is in the middle of where the roof line meets at the top. And that's kind of one little thing I like to, focus on whenever I do these builds. And yeah, so it's basically identical on, the front side as it is to the back side. And then any like side parts of the building, I'll have the roof facing the other way, so it gives it a little bit more character, a little different, perspective of how you view the building, which is also nice. Depending on the build, some of you might wait on the windows till later. Most people might like complete the build, not add any windows, and then do the interior and kind of place in the windows as they feel necessary. That's one way to do it. Okay, so I just punched in some windows. Kind of your own preference of where you feel like they should go. Now, just for the sake of time here, I just kind of did this a little quickly instead of giving it a lot of thought on it because, I have to get a video out. But I could spend a lot of time just kind of thinking of where these windows can go. Not all sides, have to have windows or like a bunch of windows. For example, on this side, I kind of added another little overhang here, just kind of to break up the roof. Attracts your eye to it, and this could be like an area where we store logs and we don't want them to get wet or something. Okay, so what I did here is added some mini roofs. This is kind of what I mean, where we have these like little jut outs here, and we can fit a window right in here. Now, this is very common in medieval builds where like these little mini roofs are on the top of like every roof in medieval. And to make it a little bit more interesting, the higher up you, since this is pretty big, the higher up I went, the further it like went out and overhanged, which is going to be pretty interesting and pretty cool, It adds a nice little touch, nice little detail. I do like that up there. Now I'm going to add a couple more on this side to break it up. Now we don't need to do it on this side because we have the roof here connecting in it, so it would just look weird if it was here. But yeah, here it's the same on both sides, and it looks really cool on this side. But like I said, that design choice is very common in medieval type builds. But I'm gonna get to work here, continue adding more of those here. Alright, so I even added a little bit more detail to the side over here. So we have two more of these windows here. And I also added a place for a chimney right here. I thought that was the perfect spot for it. I don't really like how that looks. So we might just stick with this 2x2 here. But that is a perfect spot for a chimney. And this is kind of what we're looking like for the blueprint of this house. Now, this is pretty big. You don't have to go this size. I just like to build very big. But yeah, this is the blueprint. Like I said, I like to build everything out of stone first to kind of get an idea. Alright, so now we're in the part of the build where we get to add in the color, all of the blocks. We have our blueprint all set in stone. Literally, set in stone. It's just a rough blueprint of how this is going to go. The first thing I do is is decide the framing. What block I'm going to use, where the framing is going to go, and usually the framing is just the borders and whatnot. So, and I usually, for medieval type builds, I usually go with like a log or a stripped log. Okay, so I went ahead and added some borders and frames around the build. And yeah, it looks nice, kind of what I envisioned it to look like. And I also went ahead, took the extra step, and decided to add some more texture into the framing by alternating between the dark oak full wood and the stripped dark oak wood. And it just adds nice little details there like every other block. Alright, so I added in the mud and the variety of cobble deep slate in the base here. Now I left out the doorways here because I think I want to make this out of wood. And I also did the same thing on the back side. So just the doorways I left blank for now. But the base is coming together. Alright, so we have our base kind of all complete. I did go ahead and add in these stairs to make the arch more rounder and make it look a little bit better. And I do like that. Now I'm going to hold off on the doorways on the front and back side for right now. Next, we're going to work on the walls, the middle section. And what I like to do is just pick a main block of what I want my walls to turn out to look like and turn out to be. So considering that we're using dark oak for the framing, I think I'm going to use spruce planks as kind of a lighter texture for the walls. I don't think it will look that good if we used the dark oak planks. I mean, it could. You could try it, but I think the spruce planks might go better. This is one of those things where it's kind of like experimental. Trial and error. You pick one block, see if it looks good. Pick another block, see if that looks good. And whatever looks better, you kind of go with it. So yeah, I'm going to fill in these walls. Alright, so I decided to fill in the walls with spruce wood. And I also mixed in stripped spruce wood, which, like every other block, I added in a solid beam of stripped spruce wood, which I think looks really cool. And taking a step back, this is looking really nice. It's looking very plain right now still. We haven't gotten to the detail phase yet, but we're starting to look and see what this house is going to look like color-wise. Now, there's really only one more section left to do here. It's the roof. And yeah, since I used spruce wood down for the walls, we are going to use dark oak for the roof. Now, you don't have to use dark oak. You could use, I don't know, maybe brick. You could use deep slate. You could use cobblestone. Any block you want. I'm just going for dark oak because it is very common to see dark oak roofs in medieval builds. So I'm going to get that down, and I will get back with the next step. Alright, so I just finished converting the roof over to all dark oak, which looks really cool taking a step back at it. And I also added a trim of basalt, which is something I didn't do in my starter house, but this also adds a lot of cool detail and interest to the build, adding a nice little basalt trim. And then I did do this in my starter house. The facing of the roof, I used mud bricks. Now, don't worry. All of this looks plain. It's all one block. Don't you worry. We are going to be adding a variety of different textures and different details. And we are going to be adding a new technique, and it is shading. We are going to be kind of creating shadows and creating gradients with darker blocks transitioning into lighter blocks to create a shadow effect. And so some blocks we could use would be this mangrove wood block, oak wood, stripped spruce. We could even use dark oak, stripped dark oak. So these are the blocks we could potentially use for this. Alright, so I just finished adding some shades. Took a little bit of time, but I added some shading, some gradients around the entire build. I'll just point out a little bit here. So you could see here I added some shades in the spruce wall here. I'm going from dark to light. with the stripped dark oak wood going into the new mangrove wood, and then the oak wood, and then the stripped spruce. And this just basically adds some more character to the build, adds some detail, makes it look a little bit more realistic with the shadows. Trying to give off a shadow effect here. And then down here at the base, in areas where it is under an overhang or something like that, I replaced the deep slate with black stone. And then for the facing of the roof, the higher up, I just kind of made a gradient of mud bricks going into the rooted dirt and then the jungle planks. So going from darker down here to slowly getting lighter at the top. Alrighty, so as you can see, a lot has changed and we're getting very close to the finish of this build here. And I added as much detail without making it look too junky. I also just kind of did this very quickly just for video sakes to get this video out on time. I added some signs along the beams, the borders, just have it stick out a little bit more. It's just on the base here all around the build and the middle beam here. I also added some stairs to the roofs to make it look a little bit more rigid, which I think looks really cool. You see this a lot in medieval builds, almost like a tiled roof, but it's not tiled because it's wooden. I just tried to make it a little bit more rigid and thicken it up a little bit. You see I added some white windows in there, just to add a little bit of contrast. I didn't want to add like black or brown or light gray windows. I wanted to go purely white just for contrast sakes. And I have two different styles of windows. I have the panes here, and I also have the full block windows, and it's like set back one, which I think looks really cool. Added some, some slabs and stairs to make like windowsills and all that. You can see I added a lot of barrels in places just to kind of another like decoration or design for like window framing. I think would look really cool. Now a lot of this will get covered up by foliage, potted plants hanging off the windows and all that. A lot of it will get covered up, but it is a nice detail to have. And I'm just gonna take a quick flyby. I did forget something. I just noticed the chimney. Don't worry, I'll get that done once the final build comes out. But yeah, it looks really nice. You could also see I added some buttons as just little detail that you'll see a lot of builders use. Just buttons on the basalt here. And I also changed this up a little bit. It was a little bit thick and it looked a little weird, so I just made it a little thinner here. Again, this could be like an overhang to kind of maybe keep wood logs dry or whatever. Maybe this is storage here or something. But yeah, this is looking pretty cool. I also added some lighting, as you can see, just hanging up there and hanging down here. Lighting is very key. And also, it is really important if you want to keep mobs from spawning. These stairs do a lot, not just aesthetically, but they also reduce the number of spawning spaces a mob could spawn on your roof if you just use full blocks, which is a really cool and nice thing to have. But this is just the basic plain details you could add. I could go a lot more, a lot deeper. Heck, I can make the walls look like they're just destroyed and like make them look broken up and all that. But I'm not gonna, just for video sakes, I'm not gonna go that far. But it is starting to come along, starting to come together. Now I added the door down there. I'm not really gonna do much of a pathway out front. The tutorial is just strictly the build. I'm not really worried about how the front landscaping looks. But we are going to do one final detail. We're going to add some foliage, some dead vines, a lot of vines, a lot of flower pots, just a lot of foliage, a lot of greenery. Greenery is key to making your builds look cool. And so I'm going to add that now. Alright, everybody. So I added in all the final details in the foliage and the greenery. This is officially done. Now, the sky is the limit. There is so much potential for detail, so much more room for detail, but for the sake of this video, I'm going to just add the basics of detail here. But yeah, I added the foliage, added some nice bushes in the front, some overgrown vines here, some nice flower beds, added some candles, and all in all, it looks really cool. So this is the view from the front side. One of the sides here with the chimney looking really nice. At the back side, added another overgrown vine here. And I also added some glow lichen as another touch here. And the last side, which looks really cool. Now you can go above and beyond and like add some more, landscape out in front, maybe some trees, go extra with the detail. But yeah, now I will say this is pretty big for a starter house. This is huge for a starter house. I don't expect you to build this size. Again, for me, I am really used to building buildings this big, especially for starter houses. Your starter house is most likely or should be maybe half this size, I would say. But yeah, this is more like a tavern size build here, like a medieval tavern or an inn. But anyways, guys, that is going to be it for this tutorial. I hope you guys did learn something from this tutorial. My whole purpose, my whole goal was to show you, take you through my thought process and my build process, show you some of the tips and tricks that I have that I use on building builds such like these every time I build. If you guys have any feedback or any comments you'd like to share, please feel free to share it in the comments section below. But anyways, guys, if you guys did enjoy this video, please give it a thumbs up. It'll be much appreciated if you did. And if you guys are new, consider subscribing. And I will see you in the next video.